Welcome to Two Writers
Talking Shit.
I'm Melanie.
And I'm Saeed.
And we've got an amazing guest with us here today,
Amazing.
Saeed.
Who is it?
It's you.
We're supposed
Wait,
to
are they
introduce-
coming?
You're in the
it's
guest
you.
seat. You're in the guest seat.
Yeah. So our guest today, if they'll allow us to introduce them, is a celebrated queer playwright. His works are produced all over the world. He's also my writing partner, my soulmate, my best friend. Please welcome to the pod, Bixby Elliot.
Yay!
We are hoping to get an air horn soon.
I mean,
really?
We will. Yeah. I mean, you can always put an air horn in editing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. You can do so much in editing.
We'll put 4 air horns for you.
Yeah, for you. You deserve them. Now, Bixby, why don't you tell Saeed how we met?
Please, I want to know this.
Oh, Lord. She loves to make me tell this story, but then she gets annoyed when I tell the story.
I love that even more.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the story. I'm from New York. I don't know if you said that. I'm a New Yorker.
Nice.
Here visiting. But my partner is Paul Davis, and he's a casting director. And Melanie was his intern at one time, or the office's intern at one time. And we had a holiday party. I believe it was a Christmas party. Maybe not. We have a very small apartment, like very studio small apartment in the city. And it was a party with like 35 people packed into this studio. And at one point in whisks Melanie and a friend of hers. They were dressed very chicly, much too chic for the party. And she breezed in, and I said, who was, she came in, she sort of looked around, she stayed for like 3 moments, and then she whisked out. And I turned to my husband and I said, who is that? And he goes, that's Melanie, my intern. I said, I hate her. Completely hated her. And then 6 months later, my husband and I were again walking down the street, and we run into a young woman and her friend, and we sit there on the street corner. And in New York, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you just talk for like 45 minutes and you laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh.
Yes.
And then these 2 young ladies leave, and I turn to my husband and I say, who is that woman? And he says, that's Melanie, my intern. And I said, oh my God, I love her. And he's like, you idiot. You hated her like 6 months ago. But honestly, it's been a dream ever since.
It really has. It really has. Now, Bixby doesn't remember this, but we actually...
Okay, yeah, what's your side?
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, my side is that it's like, I always knew who Bixby was because it was kind of like, almost like a celebrity type figure in, theater circles in New York.
Nice.
And
Absolutely not.
So did you ever apply to go to grad school?
I did. I didn't get in.
Wait. Which grad schools did you apply to?
NYU, LMU, UCLA, USC.
Okay. Well, so I applied to...
Such a great process, isn't it? I just love it.
The worst.
I was so confident when I did my application, and also it's like I was like, what was I applying for? Like playwriting? Like anyone needs a fucking graduate degree in playwriting, a master of playwriting. And
Someone in the table does have a master's in playwriting.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, I'll tell you how much you don't need it. Okay.
So I was so confident, and I only applied to 3 places. I applied to Yale, Juilliard, and then as a safety backup, I said, just throw in NYU. You know what I mean? And then the very first rejection I got was from NYU. Mm-hmm. And I said, this
they're very quick.
This doesn't look good for me. But I do know that Juilliard, I must have been in contention for a moment because Juilliard did invite me to a play reading of one of their current students. And I saw Bixby at the play reading. He pretended to not know me. And I was like, Bixby, it's me. You're Paul's intern.
I was like, who?
Yeah, he couldn't have been less interested.
Well, there were more important people there I was schmoozing with too.
That play reading was one of the worst plays I've ever had to sit through, and that's saying a lot in New York. We go to a lot of plays.
So I applied to Juilliard at least 17 times, still applying as it were this year. Please take me, because the first year I applied, I got a little note that said if we took 5 playwrights, you would have been the 5th.
Oh shit!
Because they only take 4.
Yeah.
4 people. 4 people.
4 people. But so I kept going back. But I saw a number of very bad plays in those reading series each year. Yeah. But Melanie, the thing is did you ever get the invite to they used to do this weird thing. They would not do interviews. They wouldn't boil it down to 10 people. They would boil it down to 10 people, and they would invite you to come to this end of year presentation. And then they would say, make sure to see Chris and Marcia at the reception afterwards. And so it was this ridiculous Hunger Games thing where you could see these 10 playwrights hovering around desperate to speak to Chris Durang and Marcia Norman and Marcia, wait, what's her last name? Marsha Norman? Oh my God. Yes, that's her name. Wow.
It will be that for now.
Thank you so much. I really want to come to your school. I don't know who runs it, but no. But that was bizarre. Anyways. Yeah.
So did you get into Juilliard?
No, I did not get into Juilliard.
So where did you end up getting in, Bixby?
I went to Columbia University,
which
I applied to Yale.
Another small school.
Yeah. I will say, like, it has improved in stature over the years. When I went, it was still sort of like second tier, I think would be considered. But I applied to Yale, NYU, Juilliard, and Columbia, and I got in.
So what do you have an MFA in playwriting?
I have a Master's of Fine Arts in playwriting.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, what did you take away from that program?
I mean, I took away a great deal of debt. No, so I had been working up until then, and I had a 401k, and I literally drained my 401k to pay for school because you don't want to take out too much loans. But I did take up a little bit my second year, I think, and I ended up paying that off like for the next 15 years, 20 years.
What? How much does grad school cost?
Well, let me be clear.
Yeah.
Most educational institutions are for-profit institutions. They are not called that, but like they are absolutely. Like my program went from 4 people the year I joined to the next year's class was 10, and no change.
I wonder why.
No change in faculty though, right? So none of their cost increase. They just took 7 more students and increased their, their intake, their profit.
How much does grad school cost?
That's a great question. I wish I knew, but it must have been like $50,000? I don't know. Like,
so and it's 2
like
years?
24. It was 3, but the third year you just did internships and stuff. So I went back to work.
$100,000.
Oh, easily you could spend. No. When I was there, it was like 25 the first year, 25 the second. But then if you're not working or something like that, you probably will spend at least that in housing costs and stuff like that, right?
Oh, right.
So, I mean.
Now, so for people who might be thinking about getting their graduate degree, maybe not in playwriting, but let's say screenwriting.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer them?
It's really tough because like I went in thinking that I was going to be like this would be the place where I would find my people, right? And actually the first semester I remember I pulled together all the dramaturgs, all the playwrights, all the directors and had this meeting and was like, look, we have the chance to be like, like the John Houseman class with Kevin Kline and at Juilliard, who they went on to have a troupe of actors, right? And I was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to come together? And they were all like, we're not doing that. Right. And I was like,
oh shit.
It was a real like wake up call for me.
Yeah.
And then you, how do I say this? You realize that a lot of people there are rich because it costs so much money, and they're actually not that good. Sure. I wouldn't go that far, but maybe. But you also realize they're not necessarily definitely doing this thing with their life. Like I created a great close association with one of the directors in the program who I thought, okay, this is going to be my lifelong collaborator. And then he dropped out the second year and ended up going to law school and then ended up doing something else. And now I have no idea what he's doing. He's a great guy. I love him. But I didn't know that it was so, I had drained my 401k to do this thing that was going to change my career.
Right.
And not everybody is like that, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the true thing about it is look, I think school is good. Like I went to, college, got a screenwriting degree in college. And I tried because just thinking okay, well, now let me get a master's degree since I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
But I do think I did learn from being in college. Now, as far as a master's, what did you learn from the master's program that you do use now, if any? I
think for me, I had studied acting in undergrad and then become a writer. I started writing in between that and going to grad school. So for me, grad school seemed like the extension of what I had taken a class, I had taken some more classes, and then I was like, oh, what do you do next? You go to grad school. Yeah. And I had this dream I was going to meet all these collaborators, and that did not pan out. What did pan out is I was able to see my work evolve. I had a lot of time to write, right? I wrote a lot. And then I made opportunities where I could see my work. And I did have a lot of people there to help me do that. There were actors, there were directors and things like that. But that is not embedded into the program. And had I not been slightly older, I would have missed that opportunity entirely, right? So I think I probably saw 4 or 5 shows, either shorter or longer, up on their feet in front of people during my career at at Columbia, and I think my classmates had one opportunity. Like there was one embedded into the process, and it was only because there were 3 of us in the program. Because there were 4 of us the first year, one of them dropped out, 3 of us, and so because there were just 3 of us, there was extra money to do full-length productions of our shows at the end for our thesis. So, but they've not had that since I was there. So,
did any kind of like professional opportunities come out of that, or like did your professors, or like is there any kind of like networking that sort of helps you get it?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, mostly because so many people did not continue on. None of the writers that I know of in my year continued on. A couple of writers before or after me did. The biggest name, Bo Williman, he was the year before me, or 2 years before me, I'm sorry, and he hated the program. Oh God, now I'm really talking out of school. From my impression was that he really hated the program.
Okay.
And so I don't think he has, he's not giving back to Columbia.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that too is like, I do believe that the ones who don't make it are the ones who stop somehow. Like,
Wait, say that again.
So what I mean is like, you were talking about how in your class, the only ones that like kind of continue doing it is like you and
or just like me,
right? And what I'm saying is, I share the same experience because I was in like this UCLA online TV program, and there were a couple writers better than me, but they stopped. Yeah. Like, you know, we'd be on Facebook and I see and it'd be like, okay, back to work or back to and I'm just like, damn, you stopped, but I didn't stop.
Right.
And you didn't stop.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with people stopping, right? Of course. But like, I just was under the impression that we'd all laid down a chunk of fucking cash to do this thing, and that we all were in it for the long run. And that was just my mistake. Like, I didn't know that, you know? So, and it makes sense. If school costs so much, like, you're going to have people who, people stop for a lot of different reasons, but whatever. So, yeah.
So after getting this MFA in playwriting, you did actually sort of decide that what you wanted to do was transition into TV and film writing.
I mean, I wrote plays for a long time, probably longer than I should have, and pursued a career as a playwright. And I thought that's what I was going to do. You know, I thought that was where I was going to be. But then you quickly realize there's just absolutely no chance of making any money at all, and there's no chance of like anybody seeing your stuff, right? Like your best shot is a Broadway play, and even then, you know, it takes performance after performance to get to 1 million people. Whereas if you do a movie or a TV show, at least your shot of people seeing your work is stronger. But I did transition. Was that the question? I did transition. Yeah.
So what advice would you give playwrights who are looking to transition to TV and film writing?
Learn the craft. I really think like it is different. It is different.
What do you think the biggest differences are?
Story. I think as a playwright, you have. I would have said like 2 years ago, I would have said the rules, and I would have said plays have no rules, TV and film have rules, right? And that is true-ish, right? But I think even plays need story. And so, but now today I would say it's story first, right? And so many playwrights, including myself, they want to do tone, they want to do theme, they want to do character, they want to do everything else. And if you try to tell them that story matters to audiences, they'll be like, no, it doesn't. And it does. That's why we go to the theater. It's why we go to movies. It's why we go watch a television show. It's because we want to see people doing something, and we want to see them succeed and fail until they get what they want, right? You know, it's like when it finally sunk in for me, it was like a revelation. And I was like, oh my God, now I know what everybody's talking about, you know, which doesn't mean you have to follow a formula. It doesn't mean you have to, not have character, not have environment, not have theme. It can be important. It can be all that. But we have to watch somebody doing something, you know, week after week, you know.
Yeah.
And so many playwrights don't know how to do that, and they're not taught that. And that is what I would say. So, and then I would say just do it, right? Like when I decided I wanted to transition, I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. And so I set myself a task, and I decided I was going to write 6 original pilots in 6 months. They didn't have to be good, nothing at all. But that's what I was going to do, right?
That's dope, though.
Right. So,
like boot camp.
And it's also like, we can talk about this later, but I'm like huge on like goals and accountability. So I decided that I was going to write a check for $500 to Donald Trump's re-election campaign. And I sent it to my friend who lived in Los Angeles. Her name's Wendy. And at the end of the month, by midnight my time, East Coast, if she did not receive it, she had to send the check in. Now, at the time, I did not have that kind of money. I don't really have that money now, and I definitely didn't have it to send to Donald Trump's reelection campaign.
100%. But that's putting the fire under you, though.
Absolutely. And then it became sort of fun because each month she would send me a video of like her burning the check, or like we get to the point where the last one is like, I think her husband ate the check and she videotaped it. And it was great because I would send a new check every month.
So you wrote the 6 pilots.
I did. They really sucked. I think there was one of them that I kept and I worked on, which I think in the back of my mind was my goal. I was like, let's see if I can get one that's decent and then I can keep working on it. Yeah. But the other thing I learned is I figured out a way in which I can write a pilot and I can write it quickly. I have friends who they'll take a year or 2 years to write something. And that's also, I would say that to playwrights too. I would say if you're going to get into TV and film, write quickly.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Bixby, you did sort of have 2 careers at the same time, because you had a career as a thriving playwright with an MFA from Columbia, and then you also had this full-on corporate career with a very high-level job at Google. So how did you do both of those things?
I worked a lot. I do think this is a really interesting topic because I used to be the person everybody would come to talk about this, and now I have subsequently left my corporate job, and I don't have a day job, and it's incredible as well. But I think there is a lot of I myself used to think, I have this job, and I if I were really serious about my career, I would quit it. If I was really going to make this happen, I'll quit my job and I'll live in a car and I won't have any money. But for me, I grew up. I always say I grew up trailer trash in Florida. I was poor. I didn't have a lot of home security, and so not having a job and not having a weekly paycheck was I was unable to create in those circumstances. So by having a job and knowing I was going to have money, it actually made me more creative and gave me more time. And I found that with a schedule, I was able to actually do more. Doesn't work for everybody. I understand that. But for me, I was able to say, okay, I'm going to write this play. I've got to work 9 to 5 these days. So on Tuesdays, I'm going to work late that night. And then on Saturday, I'm going to write all day kind of thing. And for me, that was a very good formula. I know it's not everybody's deal. The other thing is I think having my day job gave me skills and confidence that I would never have gotten if I was just writing. So I know people think I'm cocky, but the moment I have the opportunity to be a showrunner on a TV show, I know I will be an amazing showrunner. I have managed a team of 14 people, $22 billion project, not billion, I'm so sorry. $22 million project. It was still a lot of money, right? I understand how to communicate. I understand how to delegate tasks. I understand the business side of it. And, having firsthand, during the pandemic, listened to my partner, who's a casting director he did a network TV show during the pandemic. The showrunner was wildly unprepared to do that role, and unfortunately, it's not a creative role, right? Yes, of course, writing the show is creative, but this other part is about managing people. Yeah,
writing is the least.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and if you, yes. So that's one thing. I'll also I presented in, my job was, I worked at Google and I worked for the research scientist organization. And some of those people are some of the most renowned research scientists in the world, that I'm working with. And, I spoke with them on a daily basis. I would present to large groups of people. All of these things gave me a confidence that I just did not have before that. And so in many ways, I'm very, very grateful for, particularly my time at Google, but for all the corporate work I had, or the jobs I had, That being said, a year ago, I left my job, and I had no idea what it felt like to wake up in the morning and do the thing that you want to do with your life every day. And I think for the first 2 months, I was just on cloud 9. I couldn't believe it. And I am very grateful for that. And it took a lot of hard work to get to that moment, but I will do anything I can to keep it.
Hell yeah.
I want to open up a conversation about having transparency, about having a job outside of of writing, right? Because I think that there's a lot of shame around that. And I think it's something that people don't talk about enough. And the truth is that most people have to have a job outside of like TV writing
For sure.
or screenwriting. I mean, definitely playwriting. Without, you need to have like 3 other jobs outside of playwriting.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's like, I think what a lot of people don't realize is like, you can be working at really like almost like the highest level, right? It's like you can be working with like the top comedy producers in Hollywood. You can be developing a TV show with them. You can be pitching them, and it's like, and you are not making $1.
Oh,
You're not even making 75 cents. You know, it's like even you can sell a TV show and not be making enough money to live, because the truth is it will probably take 6 months for your contract to close.
For sure.
And then it's like, you know, you're getting these payments in increments, and they're being siphoned through like, you know, your reps and taxes. If you're not like, you know, if you're an individual and you don't have a company set up, that's a conversation for a different time. But it's like, you know, you're not making enough money to live even when you sell a TV show. So it's like you really have to be at a level that, you know, I'm certainly not at yet, you know, to not be able to not need other income, or like, you know, if you don't have a spouse who's the breadwinner, or you don't have like a family member supporting you, like you really have to have something else going on. So I never had a corporate job before. I never had like really any kind of real job. And then 2 years ago, I got my very first corporate job working at a startup. And I won't say too much about it because I'm still working there. And in the beginning, I felt like, oh, it's like role play. You know what I mean? Because it's like I had seen like, you know, The Office. I felt like, oh, I'm like cosplaying like a corporate person. And I was just like, I had always heard like, oh, it's gonna suck the soul out of you. And like, you know, you're gonna just be an empty shell of a person. And I said, not me, you know, I'm not like other people. And then one day it happened, you know, it happened to me. And I'm still like myself trying to figure out a way to kind of like push through that and like have time to be creative and like, you know, cultivate my inner garden, or even like live a life outside of my computer.
Did you say cultivate your inner garden?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Is that a thing? Is that a thing? I've never heard of that.
That was a beautiful saying.
Yeah.
But
what are you growing in there? Go ahead.
I agree, though. I do think, like, I worked retail, a shitty retail job, and
tell us about that.
It was a shitty retail job at a record store, and this is like 2 years ago. So
record store in San Francisco?
It was in Berkeley. I don't want to say the name, but
I didn't know record store existed anymore. But of course, in Berkeley they do.
Exactly.
But that's my point, though, right? Yeah. So I remember one day my boss was like, "You know, you're stepping into a dinosaur." And I was like, oh, shit, I got to get me another job. But I didn't. But I stayed there to the very end, like you. And I do think if you're an upcoming writer out there and you're listening to this, it's okay to have a job and pursue this. You don't have to like this idea of like, I'm just going to live out of my fucking car and park in front of Paramount. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can have
or lie about it too. Like there are these people who are like, I forget who it was, but they were like, they clearly had another job. They had a job and they would be like, I'd be like, how do you make money? Oh, I just, you know, it's like, I'm like, wait, what was that? What did you just say? Because she clearly didn't want people to think she had another job. But I think people have to like, you have to embrace it for two reasons, I think. It's because there's no shame in it, right? You have to make money. But also, I think this fallacy of like, there are a lot of people, especially in the playwriting, in the theater world, who are funded by like a magic credit card from their family, which more power to them. I'm glad of it. But like, it should be clear to people that that's what you need to do in order to have a life in the theater. Yeah. That you will never, until you reach the upper echelons, be making enough money in theater in order to not have a job.
And
period.
even when you're there, you're making money because you're working on a TV show.
Probably, most likely. Yes. Which there used to be a lot of shame about that. Thank goodness that's a bit gone. We're like, oh my God, you wrote for a TV show. Now you want to be a playwright? No, that's fine. I hope nobody hears this, but I don't care anymore, actually.
No, but
I used to be like Mr. Theater, like, and you'd look my name up in the dictionary, and I theater up in the dictionary, my picture would be there. Yeah. And now I've become pretty disillusioned, unfortunately. And also because, like, theater and TV, there's like, there is an openness that it doesn't feel like is in theater. It's like film and TV, it feels like still a place where a great idea can get you somewhere, or a great script can get you somewhere. Like look at the guy, I don't know the actual story about the guy who wrote Severance, but from the sound of it, it sounds like he wrote a great script and somebody found it and now it's a great TV show.
Also, I never, before working at a corporate job, I don't know that Severance would have hit me the same way. Like, watching Severance, I literally was like, this is a masterpiece.
I had days where I would just be like, please lobotomize me.
Yeah, of course, yes.
I'm looking at the clock and it's 12 and I don't get off till 6 and I'm just dusting DVDs.
Yeah, I think also it's like people should know that it's like your job that you do so that you can live and you can pay your rent and your health insurance. It's like, that doesn't define you. You can still, when you meet people, you can still say, I'm a writer. Yeah. You don't have to say, well, I'm a writer, but I work at this corporate job, or I'm a writer, but I work at this record. Yeah. You don't need to, you can just say, I'm a writer.
No, I think the thing that some people do that is, that I never thought about or really clued into was they match that day job with their passion, right? Like, I have a friend who, when I was sort of thinking about taking on new work, she was like, I want to find things that fuel my soul as well, even if it's my day job. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I never did that. So that's one way to go too, is to find something that's aligned with your values, or you won't feel like it's sucking your soul every day. So
it's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. And also, it's you can be innovative about how you approach it. I have one job where I'm kept on retainer to write TikToks, because people actually love that. Brands and companies love this idea of we have a screenwriter on staff who writes our TikToks.
Yeah, of course.
So listen, it's a great job. It's really fun, and it's I am passionate about it. Okay, but so Bixby, let's talk.
Can we talk about this for just a second? It's a slight detour. Yeah. But you guys, this site Upwork, it's for freelancers, and you go on and people are looking for people to do jobs and stuff like that. So I was recently, let's check this out. So there are so many, so you type in writer or ghostwriter stuff. There's so many people on there that want somebody to write a 20,000 or 30,000 word romance novel. It's always romance, hundreds of these posts. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah. And they wanted you to do it for $200.
That's wow.
But excuse me. It's what? The devaluation of writers on that platform is incredible. But then I actually, I was okay, I'm going to test this, because there are a couple people who want you to write a screenplay or something like that.
Yeah.
And they seemed reasonable about what they might pay you. And so I put a proposal in for a couple of them. And this one guy, he reached out to me and he sent me his short film to watch. And then we had a phone call. And he was he said to me, do you agree? He was Austrian or something. Do you agree that there are more great ideas than there are great writers in the world? And I was I don't know what that question means.
Right.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because anybody can have an idea.
Right.
But what's so interesting is that these people that have these great ideas, they think that is the more important part of it than the actual writing. And I actually disagree. I think there are millions of, and maybe this was his point, I don't know. It was a bizarre call. Maybe his point, my point is that there are thousands and thousands of ideas out 100%. There, but to sit down and put a pen on a piece of paper or type it out, that's the work, right?
100%.
And not many people will do that.
Not many people will.
No.
Now, what skills from your corporate life do you use and incorporate into your creative writing life?
I mean, I would say that they aren't actually creative skills, right? But they are things that help me get the creative work done. So, I think having a rigid schedule that I write, having deadlines, I think when I am working on a project with people, I'm often the person setting up the meeting and making sure we have an agenda and all of that stuff. So I do have a sort of or people at least call me on this sort of business-y type of way I navigate the creative space, which now it just comes so secondhand to me that I don't even think about it. But somebody's hey, should we get together and think about this idea? And 2 seconds later, they've got a calendar invite on their calendar and then a Word doc that they've been shared with them with an agenda, which is just how I work now because of, Google is a very intense place, folks. I had no idea when I walked in there, but you knew it's a culture that teaches you how to work. So I pulled those ideas. Do I think I took any creative skills? I don't know. Probably. I'm not quite sure, but yeah. But then the other things that are more intangible, like leadership skills, confidence, things like that, in spades I got from them for sure. Yeah. And also the idea of like being the best person I possibly can be. Like I sat down my first day of job, and this person over here like spent 2 years like, working in a village, digging water wells, and this person over here danced with the Joffrey Ballet, and like everybody was just so impressive and so smart, and I just was like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to be just as impressive as they are. So I tried to do that in many ways.
I'm a terrible procrastinator. Do you procrastinate, Saeed?
Not much.
Really?
Really?
Not much.
Are you very like regimented? Are you very organized?
I'm much like you though, where like I'm all about Google calendars, breaking stuff up into like small achievable goals. So I like most of the time when you're talking, I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I'm working on multiple things at one time. So if one gets stale, then I move to the other one.
I can also be a gigantic procrastinator. I think it was more in my like non-writing stuff. Like I find that I'm less so when it's something I truly, truly care about. But I had teammates who used to call me a high-functioning procrastinator because they actually thought it was the way I worked most effectively if I left it to the very end. But sometimes I do that in my writing.
Yeah,
like
I mean, that's a very writerly quality to be like procrastinate. There's someone that we both know from the theater who is extremely, high level in the theater. And it's like, it's as if they can only produce in those final hours when the clock is ticking. It's literally like the draft needs to be in at 10 a.m. and they're up all night. And, they've had months to write it. And it's like in those hours. But it's like, I would say that's not preferable to have to work that way.
I used to convince myself that sometimes it was that like when I used to run this thing called Brooklyn Generator with my friend Aaron Mallon, where basically it was 6 playwrights and a season, and you each had a month, and you would start to write a play at the beginning of the month, and you do a public reading at the end. And I used to literally put it off to the last 3 days before my reading, and I used to say, "Oh, I'm thinking about the play the entire month," and then it just comes out. I don't know if that's true or not, but I can see that maybe some people are like that.
Well, I'll say this. Is research procrastination?
Yes. Yes.
So I heavy research.
I think sometimes it can be. I don't know. Yeah. I think if you get it done by the original deadline, it's not procrastination.
Me too. I agree.
However it takes to get it done. I'm teaching a class right now that is called Finish the Draft. And for some reason, everybody was lit up on fire for this class because I think people have a hard time finishing. But the most interesting part of it has been watching how people talk themselves out of finishing something, right? Meeting that deadline. And it's just, I'm actually really, really grateful for the experience because it's helping me at the same time I'm helping them. But it is funny. Like they'll at the beginning of the first class, we do goal setting, right? And it's all around finishing the draft. And it's interesting because by taking the class, they've already made that commitment in many ways, right? But that first class, we were setting goals, and like one of the writers was like, I commit to finishing a draft that's, and I was like, okay, let's get specific. How many pages is it going to be? 40 pages. I was like, is your play really going to be 40 pages long? Why are you doing that? And she's like, I don't know. Maybe I won't get to 60. And I was like, okay, that's interesting, So
for finish the draft, because your sort of like special secret skill is accountability. So if somebody wanted to take your finish the draft class or they wanted to work with you one-on-one, what's the best way for them to find out more about that?
BixbyElliot.com. That's BixbyElliot.com.
Okay, that's amazing.
But there's a section on there that says classes or finish the draft, and they can find out. Because we'll do classes, and I have a new session starting, I think it's the 18th of April. That'll come out, that announcement will come out this week. And then I also do one-on-one coaching as well. And if you have large groups of people, I've also done like a 90-minute workshop for like 100 people on Zoom, which was really fun too. I know. Yeah. Amazing. They were like, what's the word? Creativepreneurs. There's a word for that. Like the people who are like entrepreneurs in the creative space, not necessarily writers, but they all want to write books. And we talked to them about like ways to achieve those goals. So
Okay, are there any writing books, classes, or workshops that you recommend?
If you're a playwright, I love Amy Berryman. She's here in Los Angeles, and she's fantastic. She just had a play produced in London during the pandemic that is, I don't know if it's officially announced, so I'm not officially announcing it, but maybe going to Broadway this year, or next year rather. But she teaches a great class, especially for actors who want to be playwrights, which is really cool. So I'd recommend that. And then I'm not going to say my favorite. The book that I'm rereading now that I really like is Stephen King's book. It's called On Writing. Which
Fire.
You've read it. Yeah.
Man. That book helped me.
Yeah, it's like it's the least likely person you'd think, right? And it's got like a mix of like inspiring things. Like he wrote, I don't know, like, was it 90 pages of Carrie and then threw it in the trash? Yeah. His wife picked it out of the trash the next day and said, you should keep writing this. And that was the book that hit, right? And then like very practical stuff. Like he talks, it's for more like fiction writers, but he talks a lot about like grammar and adverbs and like paragraphs and things like that for a section. But then, he talks a lot about you just have to sit down and do it, right?
Okay, now Bixby, what are you watching, or what have you watched recently, or what have you listened to that you really love? So it can be a TV show, film, podcast.
I'm really watching TikTok. I don't know if you've heard of it. Have you heard of TikTok?
Never.
Oh my gosh, you should check it out. It's very interesting. I really am obsessed with TikTok lately, and I'm not sure why.
It's designed that way.
Well, it is designed that way, but there's starting to be more creativity on there too, right? It's less about, well, no, it's not less about. There is, of course, always like, who the influencers and what they're doing and stuff. But like you'll see people, I think it started this way, but like comedians really working stuff out and doing skits and things like that. But now I think you'll see them doing like longer form stuff or a character that you see over and over, and you could see like, oh, that could be a TV show maybe, So I'm kind of interested in what might happen there. I mean, let's face it, the kids are watching that. Oh yeah. Right? Like this is the future of the world. And I am the oldest person in this room and probably the oldest person listening to this podcast. So I should not talk about what's going to happen in the future, but it is interesting to me. So but conventional television, traditional television, I'm watching RuPaul's Drag Race, of course. I mean, fine television. And The Last of Us, we started watching that, and I mean, the third episode. Have you seen it? Have you watched it? Oh,
I'm about to dive into it tonight, though.
Oh my God! I mean, you haven't been threatened by every person in your life.
I've been staying off of TikToks.
The pressure was so great. Like literally, the amount of people that were like, "You have to watch the third episode." I was like, "Okay," and then I got to it and I understood why I was receiving so much pressure as a homosexual.
Now, do you want to recommend to Saeed your friend's podcast about dating apps?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my God. I mean, he's
using them. He's actively.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I have since January. I'm getting off April 1st, but I would love, what is this podcast? Please tell us about it.
That's a great question. What is it called now? What is
Land
it?
of the Giants.
Land of the Giants, yes.
Okay,
I have this friend, her name is Lakshmi, and I love her, first of all. We do writing sprints in the morning. She's not a writer, but we do sprints and we do business stuff. And every morning, 6:30 or 8:30, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But anyways, Lakshmi had a career in the dating apps world. Like she worked at Match, I think, for a little while, and other places. I'm not going to remember her resume very clearly. She worked at WeWork, and then she sort of transitioned out of that. But she is, she calls herself a dating activist, or that's a new thing she's trying out because she truly believes, and this we all know to some extent, those dating apps have one thing that they're interested in, and it's making money. 100%. Don't fool yourself. They're not interested in connecting people. In fact, many of the things that go on there are about keeping people apart, right? Mm-hmm. And as a society, they have really taught us a lot of terrible things, right? Like that there's somebody new just around the corner. Right. Like it's
all these options that seem like options.
Absolutely, yes. Right? That aren't options. Yeah, people are disposable. Right. Yeah. I mean, this swiping right is like the worst thing that has ever happened to our world.
But they talk about in the podcast the invention of the swipe, so you've got to listen to this.
Yeah, I just added it literally right now.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Added it, yeah.
And what's really sort of like blood curdling is when she starts to talk about like the death of hope. She's an amazing, optimistic, wonderful, incredible person, but she is worried that like this is a sign of the times. Is that I believe it's the last episode. Did you listen to the one about the Avatar?
Oh, that was sad.
So there is currently a company that instead of dating an actual person, you can create an avatar. Is not, maybe that's not the right word, but you can create your boyfriend or girlfriend in your computer that will then continue to learn about you, and you will be in a relationship with that person. And she believes that this will be the next thing. She thinks it's not that far off, actually. And then here's the kicker, and I think she said this in the podcast. I don't know. Did she say this in the podcast? Apparently, I'm going to get in trouble maybe. Apparently, this company, the one that does this and is on the forefront of it, they did like a systems upgrade and they lost like 50% of the people's avatars. So people who had like created these avatars.
Relationships.
Lakshmi, if you told me that in private, I'm so sorry. And now I've said your name very clearly for everyone to know.
Okay, Bixby, finally, where can people find you online?
Where can you find me online? It's like a store. BixbyElliot.com, or I'm at BixPix on Instagram, or Bixby Elliot on Facebook. And I am on TikTok, but I don't post on TikTok yet.
Okay, yet. Okay.
It's coming.
It's coming.
All right. Well, Bixby, it's been a pleasure having you here on Two Writers.
Talking shit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And please, out there, subscribe, comment.
And tend to your inner garden.
Yes, please.
Yeah, cultivate it. Enrich it. Give it some fertilizer.
Yeah.
The light.
Yeah. Well, another great episode.
Bye.
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 Two Writers Talking Shit is an original podcast created by Melanie Mars and Saeed Crumpler. Our producer is Kayla Guess. Our audio engineer is T. Kelly.
Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you damn well please. All we ask is that you subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and give us a glowing review.
If you're not going to give us 5 stars or any glowing reviews, then why even log on? Save your rants for an open mic.
If you have any questions for us, and I do mean any, you can email us at twowriterstalkingshit@gmail.com. That's the number 2, and then writerstalkingshit@gmail.com.
See you next episode.
Bye.